Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We'll let some people get into the room before we get started. Would love for you to drop in chat where you are watching from. Always interested to see that. I am actually not in Washington, D.C. today. I am in Sonoma. Solmaz, where are you watching from or tuning in from? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. In Newcastle, UK.
Newcastle, UK. Excellent. So we've got a pretty big time jump. For me, it's now 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So must
It's
be
9.
easy for you. Yeah. Excellent. All right. We'll give it another minute here. Okay. No one else is dropping into chat where you're watching from. All right. All right. All good.
All right.
So we'll get started here. So thank you for joining us today. This is our very last talk of this year's Focus on the Story International Photo Festival. It's our 4th annual photo festival. We're bringing it to a close today. I'm Joe Newman. I'm the founder and president of Focus on the Story. We're a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. that supports impactful visual storytelling. We've had a really great month of talks, exhibits, and photo walks. It's been incredibly fulfilling on our end, also very tiring for our all volunteer team. We've got 2 of them with us today. Eric is handling tech on the back end, and I'm also joined today by my friend, colleague, Jason Hamaker. Jason is the vice president of Focus on the Story. He's an internationally recognized musician, photographer, writer, and public speaker. He's the founder and director of Lost Origins Gallery in Washington, D.C. He's a noted photographer in his own right. His pre-war photos, his photos of pre-war Syria are in the Library of Congress, and he'll be joining us today in this conversation. So Solmaz, our guest, will have 2 of us. And now it's really my pleasure and honor to introduce our guest speaker today. Solmaz Daryani is a self-taught Iranian Azeri photographer and photojournalist based between the UK and Iran. Her work explores the connections between socioeconomic disruption, climate change, migration, water scarcity, and the environment in her native Iran. She has a bachelor's degree in computer science from the Islamic Azad University in Tehran. Daryani has worked internationally, covering social and environmental stories in Iran, Afghanistan, Turkey, and the UK. She's the recipient of the 2021 FotoEvidence W Award for the book that she'll be talking about today, The Eyes of the Earth. It's a long-term investigation into the environmental and human impact of the drying of Lake Urmia, one of the most unfortunate environmental disasters in Iran. This work also received the Ideas Tap and Magnum Photo Grants in 2015, and her work has been published by international magazines and newspapers, including the National Geographic. I just pulled that article up today, among others. Really super excited to have you here today to help us close out our festival. And I'm going to hand the floor over to you. I think you're going to show a short video for us.
Yes. I just want to say hi and thanks everyone for joining us today. I just want to add a small thing that the National Geographic work actually wasn't Lake Urmia work. It was on climate change in Afghanistan, which I worked in 2019. So it wasn't this one.
Right.
Okay. Share. Can you see my screen right now? I think it should be black.
It is black.
Yes.
Okay. So
When I walk across a steep, dried crust of salt on what used to be one of the largest salt lakes on the earth, I feel like this body of water, which is surrounded by rugged red mountains, isn't only a lake for me. It is my childhood memories, a storehouse of pain, agony, and joy, and many things that contribute to my identity. In my home country, Iran, I grew up beside one of the biggest saltwater lakes on the earth, which gave a livelihood to many people, including my mother's family. My grandfather ran a lakefront guest house in the touristy port town. As a result, I spent all my childhood summers and weekends on the shore of the Salt Lake. The lake and grandparents' house was the hub of family. When the lake was still a favorite destination, people from all over the country would travel hundreds of kilometers to the bustling lakeside resorts and cities around the lake. One of the favorite scenes that looked entertaining to me as a child was seeing people cover their bodies with this legendary black mud. I can still smell the dark mud and remember the sound of the waves. I didn't realize when the lake started to dry out. However, as the most obvious sign that something was amiss, I remember the slow lengthening of boat pier that my uncle constructed. Bit by bit, the waters began to retreat. At first, my uncle extended the pier 100 meters out to facilitate guests' access to his boat. Then, in following years, he built it out twice as far. Eventually, with the lake retreating kilometers away, he had to admit defeat. Like many other locals, we came to this sad recognition that it was going to disappear. It was shrinking to nothing. In the late 1990s, Grandpa's guest house closed permanently. Like so many structures in the area, the once crowded family hub now lies in ruins. I started telling the story of my family, lake, and people living around it in 2014, when Urmia was in its worst state and shrank to as little as 5% of its historic volume. The port town is now a sparsely populated village that young people flee to nearby cities. Neither port town nor Salt Lake resembles the place of my childhood memories.
That was great. And I've seen the book, but I thought that video was a nice introduction of what your book is about. The first thing I wanted to point out is all those photos weren't yours. Some of them were taken, I believe, by your father, right? So there's some historical photos in there as
exactly.
well. So
Yes.
please. So it's not a story just about a lake that is drying up and dying. It really is a story about the people who lived on the lake. And those people included your grandparents who ran a guest house there, and your uncles, I believe, were sailors on the lake. So what, the pictures we saw obviously were amazing. The sort of desolation, and which I assume are the modern pictures, but take us back to the 50s. What was it like on that lake? What was the atmosphere and environment like?
Yeah, actually, as I remember in my childhood, it was a touristy, very crowded, busy. That everyone. It was a hub for local trees. And also, even when I was a child, I was seeing some foreigners, because in those years, even now, it is very rare that tourists coming to Iran due to many issues that we all know about, political issues. But even that time, I would see that foreigners come to that lake and cover their bodies with the mud, and it was crowded, and all the small towns and villages around the lake were they had good incomes. People were doing agriculture, and also most of them had shops selling something related, like swimsuits or ice creams, or something related to like a holiday villages, something related to lake. And also there many people had this business of running guest houses, motels, and hotels. So it was thriving. It was very busy, and I remember that I was never bored to go to the lake, because every time there was some new guest in my grandmother's house, and I was visiting new kids and new people every time. I was almost every time. So the atmosphere was like that. But from what I can tell, before revolution, because most of these photos are taken before the revolutions, also like 50 years ago. So it's kind of the history of the lake. And it was the same thing, because I'm asking my grandparents and my mother and father how the lake was then, and they were telling that it was like always running festival. There were musicians around, some people playing in traditional instruments, and they were telling poems, and someone from all over the country with different kinds of music, they were coming there and playing their instrument for free, and people were gathering around them, dancing, and it was so it has this atmosphere.
I think that there's something about the water that's magical, and that's why we have such thriving resort communities around the water. And I can, you've painted a great picture there. I can see that activity. I can see the families and the children playing and so forth. And I'm in California now, but we're headed to the shore in Jersey after this, and it kind of reminds me of what you get on the boardwalk and things like that. So that was a really great picture. And is any of that existing today? Is there any tourists that still come to the lake?
The lake didn't disappear completely, but there is some water in north, the deeper part of the lake. So these resorts, touristic resorts, all they are ruins. They are ruined, or they are just untouched for more than 20 years. Because I've been to all of them, almost, big hotels, and there was kind of huge investments around the lake, especially when the country was after war, it was developing, and the government was going to invest on tourism. So there were a lot of investment in the region, and even just a bit far from my grandfather's guest house, which was small compared to that hotel. They built, the old company built a really nice, beautiful hotel. But after they make that, like after like 4 years, they made that, their lake started shrinking and dry. So recently I went, they didn't let anyone to go inside that hotel, but I've just heard that they didn't touch anything, like the rooms, the beds, sheets, the curtains are like untouched. So with help of lake restoration program, after many years, that this like 8 months ago, I get the permit to go inside the hotel. And it's a huge hotel. And I entered, I remembered the Shining movie. Because it was like that. It
Yeah.
was like that. Oh, the curtains were red, and it was torn, and it was thick dust on the beds, and everything was untouched. It was like untouched hotel, but ghost house, and but with hundreds of rooms there. So the tourism is completely disappeared. Um, but there are locals that come and go those places that still have water. We go and swim, or there are small ponds remnant of the lake, so people go and swim there in middle of the lake. Yeah, but there is no trees, like that's kind of that we can call it a tourism industry. No, there isn't.
So I want to also tell Jason, feel free to just dive in if you've got something you want to talk about. I mean, we want to talk about the lake. We
Oh,
want
I've
to talk
got all
about
kinds of stuff I want
how
to
the
talk
lake
about.
turned into what it is today, but we also want to talk about your photographic and artistic vision and your creative process and things like that, and in the process of creating this book. Jason, go ahead.
Well, one of the things that struck me, well, like obviously preparing for this, I knew about the lake, but until we were talking right before, I didn't realize where it sat, where it was such. So I've been really close on the Turkish side of the border, really close to the lake. And there's something to be said for time, place, location. Like it's not just a lake, like it is a monument to your family history. Like the thing that struck me is that you said your uncle or your grandfather extended a bridge 100 meters out. That's an insane amount of work to do anything like that. So as someone that I have an art gallery here in DC that does a lot of work on my own. My entire family, just by proxy, is absorbed by all the effort that I do for almost anything, even if they're not directly a part of it. Like you're a part of that story as well, where you've got generational time, effort, energy, just the amount of social hours that goes into having a guest house in one of the busiest tourist destinations is something, even if you never participated, it's imparted on generations forever. Like my kids, during the pandemic, my kids had to attend school at my art gallery that I built myself, and this is not about look what I've done, but it really deeply resonated with me once I saw what your family has done. And it's very, here in the United States, a lot of people, when they either buy a house or get an apartment, it's finished. You go and I'll take that one, you do your transaction, and then you got a house and you got to furnish it. It's totally different to create an empire, and to have an empire like your family has created be removed because of politics, but more specifically because of environmental, like what's happening has to be detrimental. And I am fascinated to hear not just what your photos are reflected, but how your family has dealt with it generationally. Like, what are your parents still around? Like, what do your parents have to say about, like, what's the familial sentiment related to the work that you've done?
Actually, I would like to explain a bit more about why the lake started shrinking, and then after that, I will answer your question. Actually, one of the reasons there are, it is simple, kinda. The withdrawal of the water from the rivers and the basin for the human use was so much that, and also in that time, the climate change started happening like in 2-3 decades ago. It's not that far. It's like in 20 years ago that this happened. So it was the withdrawal of water for agriculture after Iran-Iraq war. And this lake is one of the rare and also one of the few, it was a sixth largest salt lake in the planet, and also the biggest one in the Middle East. So it's not like just a small lake, it was a big lake, and it started shrinking after Iran-Iraq war to secure the food security, national food security with the internal and agriculture. And also it was because of climatic changes, global warming, and taking water in a time that there was ongoing drought, which it still continues. Like this year, Iran is experiencing a severe drought. And I want to add something more. Not all, my uncle was a math teacher, and he had really this designing brain, and even he could design things with looking at it. So he went to Japan. He looked to those swan boats just with the picture. He came back and he made all those swan boats in different shapes and different colors and designs himself by hand. I was seeing all the process, and also the first wooden boats he made by hand. That pier, he constructed that one and designed that one, and so he was very passionate about the lake. And even now, even that, because both my uncles, after lake started shrinking, they migrated, one of them to capital Tehran and the other one to the nearby cities. But my mother, we were living in a city near the lake, like 50 kilometers away. We weren't living in the port town, that a small town, but we were coming and going every weekend. So even right now, my uncle, he contributes a lot to lake revival, like doing some designs. For example, there was a sand factory that around that place, that the water that they were washing this sand, it was wasted. So he designed a canal that canal directs that water to the lake, so that water is not wasted. And even right now, he's designing some boats and creating some works for the employees. After he's just he's not living in that city, but he's coming and going. So there is a really important bond between my family, and I know there are many other families that have this bond around the lake, which I also told some story of some of them, because this project is a long-term project. I started in 2014, and it's been like 6 years that I'm working on that. So I met a lot of people that share the same stories.
How much more pressure is it when you are working on a story that you're so intimately involved with it, and that it's your family, as Jason said, it's your family's history here? I mean, as a journalist, I'm a former journalist, or maybe you're never a former journalist, but as a journalist, I've done these stories where I've gone and reported on communities. And while you always want to get it right, I don't have that pressure of history and family on it. How was that in terms of documenting this story? And did you feel extra pressure to really get this, to tell this story because of your ties to this lake?
Actually, I think it was really smooth for me because it was something happening during the time, because I didn't have this pressure of it was my first project, my first ever project I was doing. Actually, the photography storytelling journey started with this project for me. So I didn't, it wasn't like I was doing this for something, a magazine or a grant, nothing. I was just started so smoothly documenting. First started not with the lake, documenting my own family, started with the guest house, started with the activities of my grandmother, how she's turning the guest house to the lake, to a garden, and how my grandfather, even after all these years that the guest house is a ruin, he goes there, fixes some windows, sits there. I don't know, eat some fruits and come back home again. So this was very smooth for me, and I was documenting very with patience. It was kind of also a meditation for me when I was. It was both sad, but also it was kind of meditation for me to go walk around the lake, and it was a dead silence, just hearing some bird passing, and it was special. I think the lake and that atmosphere gave me a lot to do this project. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that resonates with me about the story, it's a very specific time and place. You know, like place is clear, it's the lake, but the fact that the lake is being removed, like this, the story you just told about your grandfather, like just walking down to his old guest house and just eating fruit in it, kind of getting his fill and walking on, like he's not ready to close the chapter yet. But the thing that I think is amazing is you've preserved that in more, like, forever with your photography, you know. And it's such a testament to the power of a camera, to, you know, something that seems as easy as, oh, I'm going to photograph my family's history on this lake. It's so much more. And especially as time moves forward, you've got this body of work that represents time, place, and family for not just you, but for anyone that has ever stayed at the cottages or any of it. You know, it's incredible. I'm excited to talk to you.
And it's universal as well, right? It can strike a chord with folks from any small town or any place that factory town in Pennsylvania where the factories are closing down, or anywhere. It has that universal appeal because we're all human and we all have the same families and the same stake in our communities. So and you mentioned your grandfather eating the fruit, going to the old guest house and eating fruit. That's extremely poignant. And I think there was a photo you showed of your grandfather opening the gate, and the buildings to the right, those were the guest houses?
Exactly. Actually, when he was getting bored, especially in summer, because in winter it's cold and it gets cold to go there. So when I was there, he was telling me, Solmaz, okay, take me to guest house. So we were going there, doing nothing, just sitting, going around, looking to the rooms and trees, because my grandmother turned that place to garden, but there were still rooms. So I was going up to some rooms that they had this lake view, and I was reviewing. I always kind of enjoyed that time. It was very, very special for me. And my grandfather, after the lake closed permanently, all the summers he was going there. And as a habit, he was opening that gate. And that gate, when the lake was still alive, was always open. Almost maybe 9 months of the year, it was open for the guests. So he was going there.
Did you know he was going to be doing that, and you positioned yourself to get that photo, or were you just up there and you saw him coming?
No, I knew that he's doing that because he's slow, because because he had just knee issues, and he had the key, and I knew that he would do that. I just parked the car, and I just came out, and the walls are kind of ruined in beside, so I was able to go up and take picture when he's coming there. And when I wasn't there, he would get a taxi and take him there, and he would do the same thing, open the gate, go slowly, sit there. And
perfect.
Yeah.
I want to stop here as well and recognize that your grandmother passed from COVID while you were in production for this book. I know that was a deep personal loss. how aware of your work had she been, and what was her thoughts, or uh, specifically your grandmother's thoughts on what you were doing, and did she share any uh, words of wisdom, or did she talk about this project with you?
Exactly. Actually, my grandmother, I had really this strong connection with my grandmother, and I think she even she was the only one that I feel like she understood my work and what I'm doing. At first, they weren't used to the camera. Because I wasn't used to it because it was just me getting a camera, and also I started with a compact, small camera at first. My father gave me as a present for my birthday. But the thing is that she got used to the camera, and she didn't even realize that there is a camera there. So, and also she was really understanding, like even my parents weren't like that. My parents were, because I was also working, and everybody was telling me, what are you doing while you're traveling alone? It's dangerous. Why are you going so far? Like, because around the lake it's far, like around 400 kilometers I need to go to tell other people's stories. So my grandmother was the only person that always understood. She was telling memories. She was telling how this guest house was constructed, and it wasn't guest house at first. They were tents, and people would come and rent them. And then the floods, when there were floods, those tents would get wet. So we started constructing this guest house. They constructed with help of my uncle, my mother, my grandfather. So she was really, really understanding what I'm doing. And yes, she was really supportive, more than anyone else. And when her passing away was very sudden, because she was in full health. She was very, very active, working, managing three, four gardens. She was always doing something with plants, and even she had gardens. Her house was full of plants, trees, and she didn't have any education. She was illiterated, but I think she understood this a strong relationship of human and environment, and respected her environment without having any education about that.
Did she ever did she get a chance to see the proofs for the book, or at all?
No, not the book, but I showed the pictures to my grandmother. Like, I was asking her opinion. Actually, for this Magnum grant, which I won in 2015, I edited it because I didn't have any connections, and it was my first grant or award that I was applying in 2015. So I edited with my mother. So, and I
Great.
was asking, because those pictures, I was asking that what she feels about it, because she grew up with the lake. She saw the lake more than me. If I saw it like for 15 years, she saw it for her whole lifetime. So I was asking from my mother that how she feels about the photos and how I should sequence them.
Sorry about that. Well, that's incredible. And the Magnum grant is a great opportunity for. I mean, we've had a couple speakers over the last 4 years who won that grant, and really has been a launching pad for work. And that was your first time you'd ever applied with this project?
Yes, it was the first project, the first grant that I applied, or even the first award, because the project wasn't complete, and they needed 10 photos, and I didn't know how. Even in 2015, I didn't know how to tell their story. I just sequenced, as I told you, with my heart and with my mom's help, and I told this story in 10 frames, and I got the grant. And this this grant was really, really helpful for me, because I think I realized that, okay, then it gave me confidence. So I started, the photography journey started for me from there.
I should add here that you had, I was first became familiar with your work last year because you had applied for one of our grants.
Yes.
We've been giving grants out for the last 2 years, and you were a finalist, didn't win, but it was not for this story. It was for the story of the impact of climate change in Afghanistan, I believe.
Yes.
Is what you had submitted to us. So that, obviously there's a link there as far as environmental impacts and so forth. What is it that about the climate change and the water scarcity issue that draws you in, and obviously you're intrigued by it? What was your decision to sort of focus on that in that area?
The first reason that I would like to work on this connection between human and their environment is my own experience, obviously, but I would not to single out climate change or water crisis, or just focus on the climate. I don't want to climatize the thing, but I'm much more interesting to show this connection, that this impact and this reply from environment to us and how we use it. And this is what it is very interesting for me, that how this connection between human and the environment in this modern era shapes, and how this developing this modern world is damaging environment, and also sometimes there is resilient, and sometimes there is a reply from the nature. So I really interested in this connection.
And I like that it's not just about the environment. It's not a science story per se. You find a way to humanize it and show the human impact on it. I want to take a second here and tell folks that we are going to go to Q&A in a few minutes. And if you have a question, please drop it into the Q&A box, and we'll get to those. You were going to show some photos. Did you want to show some photos now?
Yes, I would like to show some pages from the book.
Great.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see the book.
Okay. This is the front page of the book, and I'm going to show the other page too. The cover is a metaphor from the dying lake. When the lake, the color of the lake, when the lake starts to dry out, the salinity of the this water goes so high that a special bacteria or algae is breeding and turns the lake to blood red. So this is a metaphor from the lake dying. And this is the in the first pages of the lake, it starts with the map of the lake and how it is surrounded by mountains, and in Turkey and Iraq border. And also the editor of the book is Manouchehr Deghati. He's a famous Iranian editor and also photographer who is from Urmia city. So this is a handwritten memory of him about the lake, about his childhood, about his own childhood memories which he had around the lake. He lives in Italy now, and actually he's in exile, and he can't go back to Iran after revolution. This happened, unfortunately. And this is his memories with the lake. And here he says that it's very interesting that although that we are from different generation, we have this special common memory. So and it is about a cucumber. When people were going to swim in the lake, and because it was so salty, their eyes would get irritated. So we would take a cucumber and slices and put on our eyes, or rub it to our eyes, so that irritation goes away. So he writes about that memory that I also share it. We would do that the same thing. It's like from that generation, this cucumber memory comes to mind, and we were doing the exact same thing when we were going to lake. The book is in 3 languages. It's in Farsi or Persian, and English and French. It starts with old pictures from the lake, which I had in my uncle's family album, and also our own family album. This is Port Town Sharafkhaneh, which these ships used to commute between Urmia and Tabriz city, carry passengers, goods, and this is the same spot in the lake. Pictures from my grandfather and how lake looked before revolution and how tourist it was. Here my uncle from his building showing the water line, because in 2018 there were some heavy rainings which contributed to lake reviving. So in our daily talks, we always inside family we were talking about how much this year lake will come closer or further. And this picture on the left, it is taken by my father in 1992, and the other one in 2018, the same spot, and you can see that how the water is receding. This picture is the oldest picture that I could find, and there is my uncle. This is not my family members, but this is my uncle when he was 18, the young guy on the right. This is the same, pedal boats that my uncle constructed, and this is a picture he took from them, and the guest house on the left. My grandma's almond trees and garden when she was younger. And this is not same garden, but these are almond because they are sensitive to soil salinity, and because those salt storms happened after lake drying up, so they were sensitive and they dried, and locals just cut them. This is north of the lake, and the place that I was talking earlier about, which has a still water, and there is a bridge connects Tabriz to Urmia city, and people visit the lake in that area. This structure is made by Russians from Russian wood. It is called tal, which is Russian word, but I don't know the meaning, but I know that it is a Russian word, and it used to repair ship in water, and it was 8 meters in the height of the water was 8 meters. The coast of the lake, there were a lot of migratory birds like pelicans, flamingos around the lake, but they're all disappeared. They just come sometimes in some ponds around the lake. I haven't seen them for many years.
I mean, what we're looking at here, it's almost like Death Valley, right? Jason was just at Death Valley. I mean, it's just salt.
Yeah.
I mean, it really could become just salt flats at some point, right?
Yeah, and yeah, it's like a salt desert. Like it seems like it was a salt desert from the beginning, but it wasn't. This picture on the right is actually, I was very surprised to see these people's pictures on the wall myself too, but it was very interesting for me to see that on this small port town, these people, some of them I know, They were my grandfather or my uncle's friends. And all of them had some connection with the lake. Some of them had guest houses, some of them running boats, and some had shops. And this is as memorial on the wall of the mosque of that town. And I wrote this text for the text for the book, and it is written by my father because my handwriting was a disaster. So, so my father wrote it, but his handwriting was so good. But because he has Parkinson, it's a bit shaking. But it is also a memory for me, and I really like this the handwriting in Persian, and it's beautiful. So it is my it's about my grandmother saying goodbye to her and how brave she was, and how, and the translation also is at the end of the book. Sorry. And I took this picture in 2018 when my grandfather died.
Mm-hmm. Go back. What was that photo of that we just saw? What's that?
This is my in summers we had this habit of always going in Fridays, which is weekend in Iran, going to the lake and swimming. So after lake is dried, when I was coming back to Iran in summers, going back to Iran, my grandmother was so happy. She was always telling me that, when are you coming? She was very sad when I was leaving, very, very sad, always calling me and crying. And yes, and once when I was we had this habit when going to, in summers, in Fridays, going to lake and swim. But there was a small pond in middle of the lake, so we walked kilometers, maybe 2 kilometers to that pond, and we were swimming there. And because it is open area, and maybe some men coming there with their motorbikes to the middle of the lake, so we were swimming in our clothes. So I took this picture when my grandmother was swimming in this small pond in middle of the lake.
How deep is the pond?
It was like 1 meter. You could just stand
wow.
in.
Okay.
Yes. This place used to be very close to the town of my grandmother. Used to be also very heavily touristic, beautiful holiday village with a lot of touristic resorts around it. And you can see in the background that it is completely dry. The water used to be almost very close to this village, but it is completely dry. And here someone died and people are mourning. And the last picture is a wedding around the lake, in a garden very close to the lake coast. And I think that people around the lake are always hopeful. And also the government started a lake restoration program from 2013 to revive the lake in 10 years, which it was a bit successful because there were a lot of protests in Tabriz city, Urmia city, and also they were seeing it as a national embarrassment. And if the lake dried completely, not only it would be a disaster for Iran, it would be a disaster for neighboring countries like Armenia, Azerbaijan, and also Turkey. So also Turkey pressured Iran to do something for the lake, and they were doing something like modernizing the agriculture style around the lake. And also they had this tunnel to divert the transboundary water from Iraq to Iran to revive it. And also raining in 2018 and 2019 helped to lake come back. And
is it I mean, what is the outlook? Is it something that there's a good chance that this lake can come back, or are we too far gone?
if they don't actually, I just work about this revival. I just work with environmental journalists and scientists for a report for BBC just recently, and if it is coming back, but it needs constant care. It needs to, there are a lot of dams around the lake, and one of the reasons that lake dried, they didn't give that water rights for the lake from those dams. They just gave it to all of them to people around the lake, to agriculture, and also people had these thousands wells in their own gardens. And this is a human-made disaster. In known history of this lake, as I talked to the scientists, there wasn't a drought, there wasn't any lake dry out in the known history of this lake. So this is some human-made issue, but climate change also contributed. So the lake it came back in recent 2 years, but if they don't care about it, if they don't follow the right policies, water management policies, it will dry it completely.
Let me go to one of our questions, which is somewhat related to that topic. Given that environmental conservation and climate change are political issues now in Iran, did you feel unsafe documenting and publishing this story?
Yeah, it is. Actually, I started this project when it wasn't that much political. The environmental issues got political 2-3 years ago when a Canadian Iranian scientist, he was jailed and then he kind of suicided in prison. And also there are 4 environmentalists from the same group, from same charity and organization in the prison. So from that time, it got a bit political, not the time that I started. But I was in kind of a relation with lake restoration program when in the second year when I started my project. So I didn't feel this pressure to work on this, because first it was local and many people knew my uncle in that area in the northeast of the region. So I wasn't stopped by any police or anyone. But when I was working on one issue, they were a company that extracting unstandard and illegally salt from the lake. So I went to photograph that, and then the security caught me. And those company belonged to IRGC, and at that time I had some problems and issues. But when I'm a local and I explained them what I'm doing, and also I was very low profile. I wasn't just I wasn't very doing some this active work, being activist, sharing a lot of things in my social media. I was just doing my photography work. I didn't want to be interrupted. I wanted to make it to bring to some point that the story is some kind of complete. So I didn't feel any issues working on environmental projects inside Iran. It's not my only project. I also work in Hamun Lake in south of Iran and also other places.
So you're a little bit more high profile now than when you began the project. I mean, you've got some attention in some articles and in different shows like ours. Has it changed? Have you noticed any change in terms of your access and going back and forth? They may now see you as a journalist as opposed to someone visiting family?
Actually, no, because first in recent, like from last year, I didn't work on any project, and also it's not like what you see in the media. Yes, it is political, it is some issues, but there is also this concept of that this concept that media sometimes I don't say exaggerate. I'm sure that I have a lot of colleagues that they were working and they had to censor their work. They had to even stop working in sometimes, or their press cards were canceled. But because first I didn't work for any news agency or inside Iran or any newspaper. So I'm not also very, how can I say it, a news photographer inside Iran. So I'm working on a slow, long-term projects, and I also working low profile. But it's not like that, that everyone is working or is an activist in Iran, they arrested. No, there are many other local photographers who worked on the lake and also working on, even one of this Hamun Lake project published in National Geography, and the photographer is still working in Iran. So it's not always like that, that you can't do any project. No, I didn't have any issues.
There's a question here, and also saw something in chat about this. The colors of your photos are stunning, which I love the color palette that you've got there. Are you working on another project right now with the same color style?
Actually, the story of the color style is that I started photography with this project. So there were a lot of local photographers, established photographers in my region, very good photographers, which they were older than me, and they worked on the lake with film. They were shooting in film and black and white. So I started taking pictures from the lake in black and white, but I didn't know why I'm taking pictures in black and white, just because some other people were doing it, and I was thinking that it's beautiful, it looks beautiful, these black and white photographs from the lake. But in some point, like around 9 months after I started seriously working on this issue, I just feel that no, this is not my feeling about the lake. My childhood nostalgia is my childhood colors. It's not black and white. So I try to edit it in a way that it conveys and shows my feeling to the lake. I tried it to show that nostalgia, to show that childhood, to show a bit, photos that are kind of like water brushed, and so show that feeling. So I stopped taking picture in black and white.
Great.
It's new.
Sorry. I think we have time for another question, but Jason, do you have any last question that you want to ask before we wrap it up?
Well, I guess, who was the first family member that saw your book, and what was their response?
It's not published yet. It's going to publish next week, and I'm going to Iran, back to Iran, because also my father got corona, and I'm very worried. So I'm going back, and I will hopefully I will take books, and I will see their reactions. But they were very emotional. They haven't seen the book yet, but in one of my presentation about the book, I sent a video to my father and my parents, and my mother said that later to me, that he was so emotional and he was crying. But don't tell him that I told you that he was crying.
That's amazing.
We're going to come back, Solmaz, and I'm going to give you a final word. But first, because she's been here, this is my daughter, Camille. Camille, can you say hello to everyone? She's going to do a very important thing for us right now. We are giving away a backpack, a Peak Design backpack that people entered by attending our talks and tagging stuff on Instagram. And I've got all the names in here. Camille, you're gonna pull a piece of paper out. One piece of paper, okay? One piece of paper. Put your hand in there. Pull one out. Just one. You got one? Can you hand it to me? So the winner of our Peak Design backpack is Chris Davis-Sina. Chris, I don't know if you're out there, but I'll be in touch about that backpack. So congratulations. I also want to take a moment here to announce the winner of our grant this year. We did a grant in partnership with Fujifilm. We are awarding a $2,000 grant and a Fujifilm X-T4 to help one emerging storyteller tell a story that is community driven. And I believe the winner is actually in the in here. So I'm gonna look here real quick and see if she's still with us. She is. I'm gonna actually promote her to panelists. And
Uh-oh.
the winner of our grant this year is Fleurette Estes. Fleurette, are you there? Can you turn on your camera if you're there?
Surprise.
Surprise. Hi, Fleurette, and take yourself off mute. Congratulations. Fleurette is a member of the Navajo tribe, and
Yes,
her project idea is to document the Navajo weavers of her tribal community. And it's more than just weaving, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the project?
Yes, it's more than weaving. It's talking about the Navajo people, telling their stories about their culture. The Navajo weaving is one of the oldest art forms on the reservation. And I just want to keep telling a story of how important it is to my family and to other families on the reservation.
I love it. And you should keep in mind that Solmaz won the FotoEvidence W Award, which is a award that's awarded to a woman photographer who's telling a deeply personal story. So
Wow.
we love it.
Yes.
We're looking forward to working with you on that project and hopefully having it presented at next year's festival. I want to take a moment as well to recognize FotoEvidence. FotoEvidence is publishing the book, and I didn't know that it wasn't out yet. So it's coming out, and I, on my bookshelf, have half dozen or more books by FotoEvidence. I've had several of their speakers at our festival in the past talk when we're able to do it in person, which hopefully we will next year. And it's just a wonderful organization, a wonderful publishing company. Go to their website, check out their books. I'm, by the eyes of the earth, because the photography is stunning. But what I really loved as well is the personal stories, the personal touches with the handwriting. It reminds me a lot of Ernesto Bazan's book, Before You Grow Up, where it was not just a book, but also sort of a family memoir. And I think you're telling this story on several different levels, which I think were amazing. So we really appreciate that, and hope you have much success with that book. Jason, you have any last word?
Well, I just want to congratulate Fleurette, but I wanted to make a comparison as well. So Solmaz, someone was, your color palettes was very specific as well, and that's something that I know Fleurette also made a very conscious decision about photographing some of the weavers in color as opposed to black and white, because black and white tends to impart, whether you want it to or not, it feels old and it feels from the past. And the fact that both of you are representing these kind of deep cultural times and places, and in choosing to make them color brings that past into the now, and I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank
you. And I also want to just back up and take a moment to recognize that it was a very tough decision, Fleurette. We had 3 finalists, and we were very pleased with all 3 of them, and would have been proud if any of them had been the winner. And we went with you, but I also want to recognize that Pedro Ledesma and Polyanguru both were the other finalists and had amazing projects as well. So we look forward to seeing their work in the coming year. Solmaz, I want to hand it over to you to give us any final words. Tell us what where we should be looking for you next. My daughter is continuing to pull out names, but sorry, we've already picked a winner, David. And we'll go from there.
First, I want to congratulate for the grant, and
Thank you so much.
and I think you should definitely also apply for FotoEvidence book grants, and it's amazing foundation. And also I want to thank everyone for having me here. It was such a pleasure. And I'm working on a project about environmental injustice in Iran around oil pipelines. I will go to all those cities and villages around the pipelines, and I want to show this how people who live around one of the richest in countries that oil rich, I mean, and how this their life is just so simple, and they didn't get any share from that oil. And also it's an environmental issue that some pipelines just explode, which happened last year, and I was there. So this is my next project that hopefully I'm working on it.
Thank you very
everyone.
much. And thank you all who've tuned in today and in past shows and come out in person to our exhibits. We love it. We're gluttons for punishment. We're already looking ahead to next year because we're excited about doing some talks in person and having exhibit openings and galleries again. It's hopefully we can continue there. And I know that as I say this, the rest of the world is not exactly in the place that we are, and we do hope that our government and others will continue to try to get that the vaccines out and so forth. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we'll be following your work for sure, Solmaz. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.